are going to continue on here. Meeting our responsibilities as a Christian. And this is a big thing, because it's not just over at the baptism. You know, and that's contrary to a lot of popular religious belief, is that you kind of go down, you come up, you continue on, you're good. And that's not the case. You know, you have responsibilities. You have things to upkeep, and you can't fall away. You can go away. So, again, you know, we have to meet our responsibilities to God. And so we talked about a little bit about, one is to fear God, two is to keep His commandments, and three is to, and we'll get further into this tonight, and three is to love God. And so, you know, fearing God, how does one serve God acceptably? Well, he serves Him by fearing Him and keeping His commandments. You know, that's kind of the big thing there. It's not just this, you know, there are requirements. There are things that we have to meet. You know, it's not just a blah relationship. You know, this, he's got my back, I'm good to go. You know, but that's not what we hear a lot of. So, we need to keep those commandments. Matthew 7:21. Turn with me there. Matthew 7. Matthew 7, verse 21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father which is in heaven. I'm going to continue to read on. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, 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 have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name cast out devils? And in thy name done many wonderful works? And then I will confess unto them, depart from me, I never knew you, you worker of iniquity. Now, you know, one thing I think we need to kind of understand about this is that, you know, these aren't just necessarily, you know, I think a lot of people like to read that and say, well, these were just like hypocritical people, you know, or just these really bad people who kind of, who just did bad things their whole life. You know, these are good people. And I'm putting quotations around good. These are, you know, Christian people. This isn't just the dirty, rotten scoundrel that you think of, that this verse is talking about here. You know, this is people who feel like they're doing good things. You're, you know, your neighbor. You're a good person. And that's important to kind of wrap our mind around, that it's not just someone who, you know, is just a bad person, a murderer, a rapist. You know, it's not just that. It's people who weren't keeping the will of God. What will? How much of it? How much of the will of God? All of it. You know, it's not just someone who was on board in Matthew 6, but not on board in Matthew 19. Okay? Yeah, you know, and of course Matthew 19 talking about marriage, divorce, and remarriage. I mean, there's a lot of good people like that. But that's who that's talking about here. So, you know, we have to fear God and keep His commandments. And I think what is one big thing that comes from fear? I think another good word is respect. You know, usually when you fear someone, and I mean, it can be used for all these, but you respect what they say, and it's a full respect. You know, it's a fear in the sense of, hey, God is a jealous God. When my God says this, and I don't do it, I'm not doing His will. He means it. You know, He has the authority to say, that's not right. So, again, as Christians, we have to realize that. We have to understand that what we maybe were doing wasn't right. You know? So, again, keep His commandments, love God. You know, what was the occasion when Jesus said, thou shalt love the Lord? In Matthew 22, 37 through 38, when thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. What was the occasion there? I hope you remember this. I hope we know what the occasion was in Matthew 22 in this part. What was the occasion? What was it?
About marriage.
Well, it was after the marriage. This was after whenever the Pharisees. It was whenever the Pharisees hit him with the question, and basically was like, well, what's the greatest of these? And we talk. I'm not going to get super deep into this because I hope we kind of took away, Sunday morning, what the point was. They didn't have good intentions with those questions. These were loaded questions. They were hoping to get them all off track, hoping to get them all discombobulated and come out with their own will. And that wasn't the case. By saying those two, if we want, we can pass them out now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got some books for. Oh, wait, we have some more books. Other questions came in. We're on page 32. 32 and down at number 4.
Well, I want to say the three things that complement that we see is in Proverbs 1:7, it appears to begin with knowledge. Knowledge leads into obedience, and obedience finally turns into love.
Yeah.
So you have fear leading to the knowledge of that, leading to obedience, and as we see in 1 John chapter 5 about if you love me, keep my commandments.
Yeah. And it's like everything else. It really is. You can't have one without the other. The whole thing is that all this just jives. It just all clicks together. We letter B, we love God because He first loved us. John 3:16. We should all be able to quote John 3:16. For God so loved the world, He gave His only begotten Son. That whosoever believes in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life. And that's true. That's absolutely true. We can look at Romans 5:8. Romans chapter.
It's true, but it's conditional.
It's true, but we actually did a study on this. I mean, you can go to the John chapter 3, remember? And we can look at, well, let's turn over to John chapter 3. Because see, that's one of the most quoted, verses that there are. But look what Jesus said just a little earlier in the chapter. Okay, Jesus answered and said to them, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of heaven. But yet, we love to get down, and it's a good thing when you're a Christian. You can utilize John 3:16 in the correct way, but so much of the denominational world likes to utilize John 3:16 as He loves me, so He wouldn't do this to me. He loves me, so as long as I'm just doing my best, I went down, and I'm kind of just going through the motions, He wouldn't do that to me, and that's not what we see. Again, this is the context of it. You have to understand the context, and Jesus answers it in the very beginning of that chapter. So we do see that with keeping His commandments. That's what kind of saying a man must be born again. That means, well, you got to keep His commandments. What does it mean to be born again? That's what it means to be born again. What's behind this curtain? Not the but it's what's behind the curtain. It's the baptism. So Romans chapter 5. Romans 5, verse 8. Romans 5:8, but God commended His love toward us in that, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And that's a serious thing. It's Christ died for you. That's more than just. Now see, here's the problem though, is that Christ died for you, but you have to also die, not physically, but you have to put away the world. You have to die, you have to put to death the old man. So And that's what love is. The magnitude of God's love was manifested in the sending of His Son. You know, how can we manifest our love for God? Well, we just kind of answered it. You know, how can you manifest your love for God? You have to put to death that old man. You know, you cannot continue on living however you want. It can't be done. So,
Real quick on that too is that, you know, that's where true repentance comes in.
yeah.
And we see in the book of Nehemiah in chapter 8 where Nehemiah was the cupbearer to the king of Babylon, and he was sent down. He saw that the temple had not been built; it was all destroyed. And in 52 days he built that. But what happened was when they revealed the law back to the children of Israel, they repented and they grieved because they realized what they had done was contrary to the word of God. But they grieved. They were horrified with themselves. They had turned away from God who loved them so much, and they recognized that.
Yeah.
And that's true repentance that turns.
Well, you know, and that's in the same sense of when we see the first century Christians, you know, being pricked to the heart. I think we just read stuff like that and we just kind of use it. But, you know, being pricked to the heart doesn't just mean like, oh man, you know, I'm kind of upset about that. They took it in. You know, they recognized I'm wrong. And they had to fix it. So, again, that's kind of the responsibilities we have to continue on with, but just as we can go back to Matthew chapter 22, well, what's the biggest commandment? Well, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, and mind, but what's number 2?
Love thy neighbor.
Love thy neighbor. And this is another big thing. We have a responsibility for one another. Okay? And you know, there's so much strife that can sometimes go on in the church. Divisions. I mean, people divide. Drama. I mean, drama with one another. You know, people sitting around and let me tell you, that's not what the Lord's church is about. I can promise you that. You know, we have one goal and we have one responsibility, and that's to do the will of God. But we also have the responsibility to one another. Guys, we're in this together. You know, I hope you understand that. I hope you understand that, because I can't do this without you sometimes. And guess what? Sometimes you need me.
Just get along.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes we fail to understand our responsibilities to others. We must never be self-centered, but must consider seriously how we are accountable to those around us. Yes, sir.
I'm going to say probably 75% or better of the splits, the discussions, of the arguments and things that's in the church is because of judgment items, a matter of, you know, opinion. It's not doctrinal. Not too many issues with doctrinal issues.
No, because we can solve doctrinal issues. We can go to the doctor. You know, we can turn to that. What starts happening, though, is it's a simple thing. It's me again. Hey, it's me again. You know, it comes back down to, this isn't what I want. You know, maybe I'm a little hot-tempered, and I always think somebody's talking about me. You know, but seriously, these are things that as a Christian, you know, it's not always just as simple as, sometimes it's like, man, I gotta work on myself. Like, man, if I have a personality trait where I think everybody's out to get me all the time, or one of the biggest ones, I'm never wrong. I haven't been wrong since 1994, October 12th, 1994. That's when I was born. You know, but seriously, if you haven't been wrong since then, you might need to look at that. You might need to look at that, because that's not the quality of a Christian.
You know, Kim brought this up Sunday morning, and he speaks volumes in Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interest of others.
Yeah.
And I mean, that sums it up.
Yeah.
Philippians is a great book.
Yeah, and that's it, because guess what? I'm not going to get a higher position than you. You know, we're all literally going for the exact same prize. You know, we're striving together for that. I'm not here to beat you. I can't. I can't do it. And if I am here to beat you, I lose. See how that works? So, teaching others the truth is the greatest work you can do for one another. 2 Timothy chapter 2. 2 Timothy chapter 2. And we'll look at verse 2. And the things that thou hast heard of me among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men, who shall be able to teach others also. Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. No man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. And if any man also strive for masteries, yet is he not crowned, except he strive lawfully. So, again, you know, we have an obligation here to spread this gospel, to teach, to all be teachers. You know, if you think you're just going to sit around on this word and not apply yourself, we're done with the applying part, because we know we need to get, you know, the application down. But when you're applying it, one part that you'll see about applying it is that I have to share it. You're responsible for that. You know, just as all these people are responsible for this word as well, you're responsible to make sure that they know it. Yes?
Let's face it, we're going to obey the first and second commandment. Everything falls in right there.
Everything. That's why Jesus said it. You know, because they couldn't get around that. Because if you're going to love the Lord thy God with all their heart, soul, and mind, and then you're going to love your neighbor, well, everything else you got to do for not selfish ambition, but you have to go and bring this word. It's important. Hebrews 5. Hebrews chapter 5, verses 12 through 14. Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down and feeble knees. I'm sorry, I'm in Hebrews 12. I'm reading verse 5. Hebrews 5, verses 12 through 14. For when for the time ye ought to be teachers, you have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become such as have need of the milk, and not of strong meat. For every one that uses milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. But strong meat belongs to them that are of full age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. Let me tell you, what's this talking about? Who wants to break it down for me?
The more you learn, the more.
The more you learn. See, here's the thing. As a mature Christian, okay, as a mature Christian, it's not that you can just still be drinking milk. Because if you're just still drinking milk, you're not where you need to be. Does that make sense? You know, as a mature Christian, we need strong meat. You need to be the one helping the babies get their milk. You know, but we see a lot of that even among the church. That there's sometimes those Christians who have been in it 20, 30 years, but not engaged. You know, they're not engaged. They aren't. They haven't studied. They're still just kind of listening to what Max has to say up there. I'll listen to Max and he'll give me the word. No. You know, this is Max. All Max does is put it into context that hopefully a few of us haven't looked at before, and I just get up here and kind of, you know, direct where the conversation goes. That's it. We're all responsible for that. We have the responsibility to teach others to come to Jesus. Was this to name some Bible teachers of the first century? We could just go on and on and on and on. I mean, of course, the apostles, and then you got Paul. Well, Paul is an apostle, and then, I mean, Timothy, Stephen, you know, you could just go on. So, love others. 1 John chapter 4. This is kind of the second responsibility. You know, and it's not, I don't even think it should be the second responsibility, because it's kind of the first. You know, You gotta have compassion for what's going on out here. You know, you gotta think, these people, whether you like them or not, God wants them. Seriously. God wants them. Doesn't matter what you feel, if they hurt your feelings that one time. God wants them. 1 John 4, 7 through 11. Dad, you have a...
Yeah, I just wanted to say what you just made a comment about makes you think of Jonah.
Yeah.
He was sent to Nineveh to the Gentiles, and he did not want that to happen. And God said, I want those people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But, I mean, that's our responsibility to sometimes swallow that pride. You know, swallow that I gotta get over this. And this should be the first thing. Because let me tell you, it doesn't matter what you wish upon a person. I know it, guys. There's some not nice people. I deal with them all the time. All the time I get talked to. Really. But guess what? It has nothing in compare. You don't wish hell on anyone. Anyone. Yes.
You're to pray for those people.
You're to pray.
And another thing, you're to love your enemies.
Yeah.
And you're to pray for them. You know, a lot of people don't understand that. They hold a grudge or stuff. Christ says if you don't forgive them, he won't forgive you. That's a very serious statement.
And you know, because why? Guys, there's nothing in this life that should be so important. You should never be so prideful. Man, I'm the greatest. And they question my greatness. You know, they made me look a fool in front of a crowd of people. Who cares? It's a crowd of people. A crowd of other, people who are going to get made fun of too. It's life. So, getting back to this, 1 John chapter 4, 7, where am I? 7 through 11. Beloved, let us love one another. For love is of God, and everyone knows love is born of God and knowing God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. And this was manifested, the love of God toward us, because that God sent his only begotten Son into the world, that we might live through him. Herein is love, not that we love God, but that he loves us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God has loved us, so are we also to love one another. You know, and this also kind of makes, if you want to, Jesus, and I know we all know this, but you want to think about love. You want to think about how not important being so great on this world is. Jesus, a perfect man, God in the flesh, came down, literally, didn't have much, spit on, mocked, was hated by the majority, and then put to death. And yet, he knew that was going to happen, and we get upset, though, whenever somebody questions our authority. Really. They question our authority. He has all the authority. People still don't want to believe it, but they put him to death for it, and then we get upset because we get our feelings hurt. Really, when you put it in those terms, it's silly. It's silly. So, what is the second commandment? We just talked about this. John chapter 15, verse 12. If anyone wants to get there, they can get there before me.
This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you.
Yeah. And then continue. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. That's pretty intense verbiage there. That you should basically hold another to such an esteem, such a higher than you, that you would be willing to lay down their life, or lay down your life. I know we always say that with marriages. I'd lay down my life. That's the famous line that guys like to use, where we'd be willing to lay down our life for her. That's true. Now, I hope that would be true, husband. But let me tell you, that's what we should have. Because why? This life is nothing. You know, if it means that I can save a soul, it's nothing. It's vapor. It all returns to dust. So, again, love is not just an impulse from the feelings. Love seeks the welfare of all and works no ill to any. Love also seeks opportunity to do good. So, you know, we see this. We have an obligation, we have a responsibility to teach others. We have a responsibility to love others. Not just teach them, to love them. To have compassion.
Yeah, just to play on what you said about sometimes we get our feelings hurt or whatever, people say things, but in John 15:18, if the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're worried about, and God is like, it's me.
Yeah. You know, and it goes back to everything. It's always, you know, it's Him. Your heart, where your heart should lie, is always on that. Again, we can go back to Matthew 22 and see that almighty coin, and they wanted to get them all tripped up. The Herodians wanted to get them tripped up in that. The whole source of money, half the time, it's not even to just better our lives for a lot of people. Unfortunately, a lot of people want to make money to look better than you. I'm better than you. Again, you know, we do this thing. Me here in Jesus. Okay? At the point you're doing this, you're way out of whack. You got priorities way mixed up. That coin, this thing you worry about, give it back. That's not His. You know, that has nothing to do with what He wants. So, again, that's the love. Then, restore those who have fallen. Galatians 6:1. Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such an one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if a man think himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Love that. You know, here's the thing. We have an obligation, because here, you know, people waver, man. It's hard. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that sometimes you go through down. I've already been through them. I'm only 24 years old. Man, things are a little bit tough today. You know, we go through that a lot. But some of those people, you can fall away. Can't quite handle that. You know, and that's where we have an obligation to step in and either make sure, A, that doesn't happen, or B, you can fall away. You got to reel back in. You know, why? Well, because verse 3. If a man thinks himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceives himself. You're nothing. I'm nothing. I'm nothing. So,
Verse 7 there, too, following down, it says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that he will also reap.
yeah.
For he who sows to his flesh will also reap the corruption of the flesh, but he who sows to the Spirit will have everlasting life.
Yeah. Guys, isn't this easy? Isn't this study? Isn't it easy? You know, to get the big picture here, to truly understand what's going on, if you can really grasp those couple of verses right there and say, wait a minute, I don't mean anything. I'm not important. I never will be important. I don't need to be important. And guess what? If I feel like I'm important and I'm going for my own importance, I'm going to be judged on that. I'm going to be judged on my importance whenever we know that what are we judged by? This. We're judged by this. So the fallen must be restored. Why? Because they're no better or worse than you. We have that responsibility to reach out to them and bring them back. There's a great need in the church today for the spiritual to restore those who overtaken in faults. The fallen must be taught the truth and their responsibility to God. You can't just let them go on. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I want to get through this next part quickly. Because visit and care for others. Matthew 25, we'll turn there real quick. Matthew chapter 25, verses 41 through 46. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in. Naked, and ye clothed me not. Sick, and in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee and hunger, and athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? And then he shall answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you did it not to one of the least of these, you did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Pretty simple here. This goes right along with love one another. That whole idea. We have a responsibility because, again, guys, life is hard. I'm not saying, there's this fine line, because guess what? The worldly side of this, it can get hard. Now we aren't to be concentrating on those things, but I recognize that we live in a world where sometimes things are difficult for us. And that's what these people here, that's what we have each other for. That's what a Christian is. It's to go and be that light. Sometimes you need that shoulder to lean on. And if you're not being there to be a support system, you're not doing it right. Because you're doing it to him. Yes?
I was going to hit on an area you just left. One of the hardest things you have to do when men don't have elders is to take disciplinary action against unfaithful members.
Yes, sir. That's the next part right here. So that's why I said I wanted to get through this part quick, because we're gonna jump right into that. Christians, anyway, because that's what I want to get to tonight. Christians should always be considerate of each other's needs and be prepared to care for one another. We're to encourage others because, again, it kind of goes along with the love, and we're to practice hospitality to others with regularity. And, I think because those all kind of go into this idea of love. But the one thing I do kind of want to get to is withdrawal from others. Here's a big thing. We've discussed it before. Sometimes practicing love goes a little bit further, because every once in a while you get a hold of those people who just simply do not want to change their ways. They recognize their way, then they do not feel the need to change their way. So, turn with me to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. 1 Corinthians chapter 5. We're going to look at verses 1 through 7. It is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife, and you are puffed up, and have not rather mourned that he that hath done this deed might be taken away from among you. For I verily, as absent in body, but present in spirit, have judged already, as though I were present, concerning him that hath so done this deed. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, when you are gathered together in my spirit, with the power of our Lord Jesus Christ, to deliver such as one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus. Your glorying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? Purge out, therefore, the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you are unleavened, for even Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Verse 8, therefore let us keep the feast, not with the old leaven, neither with the leaven of the malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. I wrote unto you an epistle not to company with fornicators, yet not altogether with fornicators of this world, or with covetous, or with extortioners, or with idolaters. For then must you need go out of the world. But I have written unto you not to keep company. If any man is called a brother, be a fornicator, or covetous, or idolater, or railer, or drunkard, or extortioner, with such a one, know not to eat. For what have I to do to judge them also that are without? Do you not judge them that are within? But them that are without God judge it. Therefore, put away from among yourselves that wicked person. Okay? This is a big thing. Because, we've talked about this in the past a little bit before. What are we supposed to do? Because guess what? There's some times, and we've had those experiences. I know where I came from. Every once in a while, you go to that person. You say, look, your soul's in jeopardy. If you continue to live how you're living, scripturally, it's not looking good. And when they decide that they want to continue to live in that way.
To add to that too, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3.
That's where I was going next. But
Okay.
Go ahead and read it.
Well, no, you can go with that, but just to accessorize along with that, the 5 out of the 7 churches of Asia that we see in Revelation chapter 2 and 3, God was pointing out the sexual immorality that was going on, the wolves that were creeping in, that they were not keeping watch of, and he went on, and we see that in Jude, verses 22 and 23 also, but anyways, yeah, good.
In 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 6. Now we command you, brethren, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that you withdraw yourselves from every brother that walketh disorderly and not after the tradition which we received of us. For yourselves know how you ought to follow us, for we have behaved not ourselves disorderly among men. And then go down with me to verse 14. If any man obey not our word by this epistle, note that man, and have no company with him, that he may be ashamed. Again, there's a couple, remember when we talked about this, what are the 2 things that this is doing? There's 2 things. And why we disfellowship, because a lot of people, boy, this brings up a bad thing in people. They're like, man, you can't do that. They come up with all the hypotheticals again on, well, now they're never going to come back. Or now they don't like it. See, why do we do this? First of all, I think it's important to understand that we're doing this out of love. Okay? It's not to say, oh, there's Max. Oh, Max. We're going to put him over in a corner and throw tomatoes at him. I mean, that's not what the point is. So what are the 2 points? Why do we do this?
To save your soul.
To save their soul. So that they may be ashamed. So that they may understand, because that's, one of the biggest points is to sit down there and say, look, the way you're living, you are not living rightful. And you have to understand this. And if you continue, because think about it, if I continue to sit around with you and just say, yeah, party on, oh, what you're doing isn't good, but man, you're a cool guy, I have a good time with you. What's that doing for them? It's not showing them anything. It's not showing them anything. And the second, or maybe the first, the biggest thing too, is that we have an obligation to protect this church. We have an obligation to the church. We have an obligation to, because see, here's the thing. What happens if I'm out partying, or let's say this, you make an exception for me. Olivia's my second wife, and I came up with a big hypothetical, and I'm up here, not even a preacher, let's say I'm just a member here, and you see me up here and say a prayer. Well, guess what? Whenever someone new comes in through the door, they might know me. let stuff go. You just kind of do whatever you want here. And that's serious. So we have an obligation here that's why, for example, whenever you want to place membership, there's a vetting process. We have to make sure, if you're going to be, participating and being here, we have to make sure that you can represent this. And it's not a matter of, again, this isn't something, because we've talked about this in the past, this isn't just something to say, oh, we caught him doing it one time, get out of here. Oh, get out of here, we saw what you were doing last weekend. No, this is something, it's done out of love. We go first. This isn't just, oh, this church is off limits to you. Look, what you're doing, first of all, cannot be represented here. We can't have the wolves come in. We can't have that. And second of all, what you're doing is jeopardizing your soul. And now, guess what? We've maybe all been there. It's an obligation of a Christian to be like, man, I got to change this. I have to change my ways. I got to make this right because my soul's that important. But at the point that you say, nope, not changing it, what's probably the biggest one? Maybe. What was it? Marriage. Marriage, divorce, and remarriage. That one, people just, I look at a person. Man, I just love them, I've been with them for 30 years now. How are you going to tell me that I can't be with them anymore? I didn't tell you. Matthew 19 told you. 1 Corinthians 7 told you. I'm just here to let you know, that can't be represented here. They may be an awesome person. That's what really hurts sometimes. Whenever there's someone you really enjoy being around. But we have that obligation.
Well, there's more than just moral issues sometimes. We were in a congregation where we had a couple. They would come back, they would be back and forth. They might come for a month or so and they're gone. Might come another month or so. And instead of the men doing anything about it, they let the preacher go talk to them, they come back and stay a while and leave, and the preacher go talk to them. It's just continue like that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, finally they just quit. And you got another situation where another congregation where a man mowed the yard, took care of the maintenance outside, and one of the men had been there a long time, and called him when his name was on the board on Sunday morning. He was very unfaithful, had 2 kids. Call him to tell him you got the Lord's Supper. Mm-hmm. So he'd show up.
Yeah.
Those are issues that we don't sometimes think about dealing with.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because sometimes it's not always, and that's a big thing too. I really didn't even think about that. But what we want here, the church is taken seriously. Okay, whether you are on board with that or you're not, it is. This is a perfect organization consisting of imperfect people. But it's meant for that. It's worshiping God. It's growing closer to God. So it needs to be taken seriously. You can't just have people who just come in every once in a while whenever it feels, they're a little down because they've had a tough week, so now they're coming to church this Sunday. And, oh, good, you're here. Go up on the table. That's not what this is representing. That's not who those first century Christians were. They weren't people who just kind of, oh, cool, I'm here today. I woke up feeling good.
And that's what Brother Baird is alluding to, is the fact that it's playing church.
Yeah.
We can't play it, we have to live this.
No. Yeah. And because again, it all goes back to what do people see when they come in through that door? What do people see? Let me tell you, people aren't always as dumb as what you think. Really. People can read people. They know whenever Max is just sitting up here kicking his feet waiting for the clock to come, run out. But Max is the one doing all this. People can read people. They see how serious you are. Now, this is an obligation that we have not only to make sure those people, don't represent us, but also within ourselves we need to check that out.
I was hearing that, and I recall it, my paper that I read in the wanted to become a member of the church, but everybody was so hurried to get out of the church that he wanted to talk to somebody, but nobody was really there that he could discuss it with, you know, and it just kept him from becoming what he was Christian.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you see that, you know, and maybe, I obviously can't speak on their behalf because I'm not there, but it sounds like that's people who aren't bought in. You know, when that clock hits 8 o'clock tonight, I'm out of here. You know, and that's not what this is for. Playing church. It's not what this is for. So again, we withdraw, and sometimes it's not the easiest thing to do. Sometimes they're nice people. Sometimes we like them. But we have to set that example. 1 for the church, 2 for them. 1 for the church and 2 for them. So again, you know, we'll go ahead and finish this because we got a few minutes. The Bible places a number of responsibilities upon the individual self. So, you know, we see that we have a responsibility to God. We have a responsibility to others. Sometimes, you know, obviously we need love, care, hospitality, you know, that whole nine. But sometimes we need to remove that to set an example there. But finally, we have a responsibility to ourselves.
We have a responsibility to Christ because he's the one that went to the cross for us.
Yes.
Through his obedience. See, so with that, we need to understand that through Christ we have redemption. You know, it's up to us to save our own souls or put it to death.
Yeah.
See, so, and if you love God and you're trying to save your own soul, you want to save others also.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. You know, that's where our responsibility lies. 1 Timothy 4, verse 16. Take heed unto thyself, and unto the doctrine, continue in them, for in doing this thou shalt save thyself and them that hear thee. You know, that's why we're studying this. Not to pass time. It's to take heed so we save ourselves. Keeping oneself right in the doctrine is of vital importance. You know, examine yourself. 2 Corinthians 13, verse 15. I'm sorry, 2 Corinthians 13, verse 5. Do it not behave itself unseemingly, seek it not her own, is not easily provoked, think it no evil. No, I was in 1 Corinthians. Sorry about that. 2 Corinthians, chapter 13, verse 5. Examine yourselves, whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves. Know ye not that your own selves, how that Jesus Christ is in you, except ye be reprobates. So, you know, and that's something too. We need to be examining ourselves all the time, daily. Making sure that we're doing what's right. Because it's really hard to be an example when you're not an example.
You know, I like the King James version in that it says disqualify.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to say, but I trust you will know that we are not disqualified. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And that is, you know, that's what we're doing here. So, because we're running out of time, keep self pure. You know, save yourself. Because again, it boils down to you. You know, you will be the one judged on that day. So by constantly taking heed of yourself and examining yourself, keeping yourself pure, you know, you're going to save yourself. And then we also have that obligation to make sure this church is pure. So we are out of time. Is there any other questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
You just have to remember that when we leave here, we are in a mission field. And sometimes we go by people because we're so busy in our own lives, we don't see somebody else's struggle. We have to be cognizant of the fact that there are people that are hurting and struggling. And if we just stop and just look in their eyes, sometimes we can see it and maybe talk to them and
because, man, we get so caught up in ourselves, don't we?
Yeah.
And I mean, really, we get so caught up in ourselves. Let me tell you, there's a lot of bad things happening to a lot of people. Life's happening to them too. You know, that's something we always have to take into account. You're not the only ship on the ocean. You know,